footmen, men who certainly looked able-bodied enough. Recalling her purpose, she scanned the room. Lady Bassett was sponsoring the ball, a costume affair for the British Red Cross Society. Agnes had dressed as a winged wood sprite, the earthy tones of her outfit accentuating her fawn-coloured hair. Grace, for her part, chose the fabled guise of Pandora. Such waste, she thought. Hadn't the dowagers seen the posters warning against extravagant dress? It was positively unpatriotic. Grace glanced down at her own beautiful costume and felt a stab of guilt. Still, the disguise had been necessary in order to gain admittance to the party. She and Agnes had a higher purpose, after all. The newspaper had reported the benefit would aid wounded soldiers. Several conscientious objectors against the war would be here tonight, performing their community service by supporting the festivities. It was the reason Grace and Agnes had chosen this particular event. Edging open the small gold box that completed her ensemble as the mythical troublemaker, Grace withdrew her contraband and hid it against her gloved palm. "For king, for country, for freedom," she murmured to herself. "Miss?" She turned to Agnes. "I'll meet you back here when we finish. Agreed?" Agnes pursed her lips and nodded. Grace watched her mill through the crowd toward the opposite side of the room before she scanned the guests on her own side, seeking her first target. Jack Benningham, Viscount of Wallingford and future Earl of Stonebrooke, stood directly ahead. Grace ignored the racing of her pulse, telling herself it was simply nerves. As she stared at the tall, broad-shouldered man she recognized only from the photographs she'd seen in the society pages of the Times, and from his scandalous exploits recorded in the Tatler. His objections to the war were well publicized, though he certainly seemed fit enough for duty. At 28, the handsome Viscount Wallingford was but 8 years older than Colin and herself. He held a long-stemmed red rose and wore black velvet from head to toe. With his clipped blonde hair tied off in a faux queue at his nape, he looked every inch the 18th-century Venetian rogue Casanova. Her mouth twisted in scorn at seeing 2 women in daring costumes clinging to either side of him, Cleopatra and Lady Godiva. Grace watched as he settled an arm possessively over Cleopatra's shoulder, while bending his head to smile and whisper in Lady Godiva's ear. "Jack Benningham is a playboy, a gambler, and stays out until dawn." She'd heard the gossip, spoken in tones of mixed censure and titillation by several of the young ladies who regularly took tea at her father's establishment. And it seemed true, if Lady Godiva's blush and tittering laughter were any indication. At the moment, Grace didn't care if he was the biggest profligate in London. The only moral flaw concerning her was the fact he was here, while her dear brother was in France fighting the Boche. Moving toward him, she glanced at the others in his party. A portly man in laurel wreath and a white toga made the quintessential tyrant Julius Caesar. The tall, elderly woman beside Caesar was Lady Bassett herself, wearing the unmistakable 16th-century headdress, ruff collar and damask gown of Queen Elizabeth. Hearing a burst of hyena-like laughter rise over the buzz of conversation, Grace paused to glance toward the other side of the ballroom. Agnes must be at work distributing her feathers. Grace turned back to her quarry and met with Casanova's deliberate gaze. His sudden teasing smile caused her heart to race a staccato beat to the lively music. Jack Benningham was a coward, she reminded herself. Yet he was also a viscount, his father an earl of the realm. Grace took a moment to consider the full impact of her actions. Once the deed was done, there was no going back. And Lady Bassett, who happened to be her father's chief patroness at Swans, would surely recognize her and toss her out. She thought of her father's reaction. Dar might go through with his promise to marry her off or send her to live with Aunt Florence. She wet her lips. Escape was still an option. She could turn around and leave. Jack Benningham stifled a yawn, resisting an urge to check his pocket watch. He smiled, pretending interest as his father's friend, Lord Chumley, Julius Caesar, regaled him with another pointless anecdote. Patience, he told himself. It was imperative that he keep up pretenses. Although tonight, for some reason, Jack chafed at having to be here. Plucking another flute of champagne from a passing footman,